In 2011, Zeitz laid the foundation stone for his company, Karatbars International. The goal was for every human being to be able to own gold. What was once a one-man show is now a worldwide empire of companies that generates an annual turnover of more than 100 million euros. But Harald Zeitz has even bigger goals. A gold-based means of payment, which is crisis-proof and will revolutionize our financial system. His mission was initially just laughed at. Today, he is the market leader for innovative gold products and blockchain solutions.
Looking for the freedom from the system.
Hey, good morning. Look, Brother Kansu, man, what you and Mr. Dalco just said is I could talk for 2 hours. It's so much going on in my head. I'm trying to make this very simple. I don't want to hog the call. But I got to say, man, that 15 minutes that you gave this morning, that 15-minute period, I said, this brother is becoming an elite teacher and communicator. I mean, we all work at honing our craft and our skill, but truly, I am amazed at your ability to communicate the way you do. And that 15 minutes that you gave in that pre-call, I was just sitting here going, I said, this dude is teaching. And if you're sharing that kind of information with your team every day, man, you are a legend, absolutely, in the absolute making. I was blown away.
Kansu Hotep Atum did a master class in networking and personal development in 13 minutes. 13 minutes, I timed it, 13 minutes. Man, we need to have a longer discussion on that. I'm glad I'm driving this time, so I didn't take notes, because if I tried to recap it, I'd be on here for about 3 hours. That was amazing, Kansu. Thank you, brother, for doing that. I'm hoping everybody's plugged in, because the power call starts at 10:45. When we jump in and we give some illumination on some of the things we heard, that's just the icing on the cake. The power call is that pre-call that our amazing moderators chose out for the team as the mindset, the mastermind for the day. Now, I need to say this to you guys. Listen, I was focused on this very heavily for the last week. Mr. Best will tell you I've been calling them because I've been a little concerned, not in a bad way, just in a good way, as we get bigger, it gets harder to congeal the team. It gets harder to hold the group together. Just a little bit of history. There used to be 2 webinars per day in Karatbars International. And when they stopped doing it, the teams, they splintered. Not a bad thing. It's just not the best. The teams splintered. Wealth Builders Worldwide became prominent. Synergy Gold team became prominent. Brian McGinty's team in Australia became prominent. There's about 6 or 7 prominent teams that make up the global Karatbars International family. And once that splinter occurred, it's almost impossible to bring it all back together because the teams are so large. We do a really good job on Thursday night with the Empower Call. That's kind of the collective. That's everybody globally. But Wealth Builders Worldwide became a cohesive team under the leadership of Ty and Val Best. That's why I make such a concerted effort to send text messages through all of my WhatsApp groups and say, I hope you're on this call. You need to bring everything to the center.
Robert Yasar, Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings to all those around the world. My name is Kansu Hotep Atum, and you are now tuned into the unofficial pre-power call warm-up show. I thank you all for being here today. Time is the most precious thing in the world. I appreciate y'all spending your time with me. I got a lot of information to cover, so I'm not going to say a whole lot. We're going to go right on in. Let's get our TV fired up. I think I'll bring my big 42 out today. Yeah, why not? Let's get started.
Understanding words is what you really need to start doing. You need to start doing your homework and understanding words. If you put an S in front of words, it becomes swords. And that's what words are. They're cutting. They can cause you great trouble.
Yes.
Humans are word-controlled creatures. So we need to establish what words mean. Again, when we talk about law, there's a Roman maximum in law that says, "For he that would be deceived, let him." Simply meaning, if you are so ignorant as to be deceived, then that's your business. That's your problem.
You hear that scripture? For he that may be deceived, let him. So it's your responsibility to get to the truth.
So you need to do your homework and find out what the words mean, especially in relation to law and government. Because there is a world of occultism that is operating today throughout the world, in which you use certain words, and when those words are used in a court, they don't mean the same thing at all.
Right.
Understanding law and the words of law, there are two things that this planet has: water and earth, water and land. Consequently, there are two kinds of law: the law of the land and the law of water. You've heard the term law of the land, but in point of fact, that's precisely what this word means, law of the land, because it is the people who live on land. And that is opposed to something else called the law of the high seas, or the law of water. You need to understand the difference. The law of the land is the law of the culture that lives on the land. And so consequently, the law of the land is different in every country. You can do things in America you can't do in Russia.
Right.
You can do things in Africa you can't do in England. So the law of the land is the law of the culture that lives on that particular land. However, there is a higher law that dominates the entire world. It's called the law of the water, or the law of the high seas. The law of water is referred to as the law of money. It doesn't matter what color you are, where you're from, or where you live. Money is money. And anytime you're doing banking or using money, you are now under the law of water, maritime admiralty.
And just if you get a chance, write down that word maritime admiralty. And you see it's up here, the right spelling, so it's MARITIME and then law. And you're going to find some very interesting things.
If you go back in history, in ancient history, where all of this began, back in the land of Canaan, and you probably have heard in the Bible, the land of Canaan. The Canaanites were Phoenician bloodline, and in the ancient Phoenician language, Cana meant merchant banker. The very word merchant comes from mer, M-E-R, for the sea, for water. As a mermaid, we have merchant. Merchant bankers. Let me give an example of the difference between the law of water and the law of the land. The law of water, as I said, is a law of banking, money, as opposed to the law of the custom of the people, or the law of the land. The Statue of Liberty must be put in water. It could not be put
I want y'all to pay very close attention to what this gentleman's about to say. This is very important.
on American land as such. It had to be put in the harbor, because it's not the Statue of Freedom. It's a Statue of Liberty. Liberty is what a sailor gets when he pulls into port on a ship. He gets liberty.
Right.
He's not free.
No.
So America is not the land of the free and the home of the brave. We're not free or brave, period. We're not free. This is not a free country.
That's right.
Now let me give you an example of how this law of the water works. Why is it that you have to go to court? People are always concerned about going to court. You go to court because you play basketball and tennis on a court. How do you play tennis on a court? You play with a racket.
Right.
Why? Because that's what it is. It's a racket. And make no mistake, they do not pick words by chance. These words are very serious. They do not use words in terms with no avail. These words are very important. When you go into a court, what's the idea of going to court? It's a game, like basketball. The whole idea in a court is to put the ball back in the other guy's court. One team gets up and they throw the ball over to that team of lawyers. That team gets up and throws the ball back into their court. And consequently, it's a ball game. And the judge is wearing a black robe, so he is the referee. The judge is the referee. He doesn't care which side wins or loses because he's going to get paid anyway.
Ooh, did you hear that? He said the judge is a referee and doesn't care which side wins or loses because he gets paid regardless. So too, this is true about the prosecutors and the defense team. So whether you go to jail, don't go to jail, whether you pay a fine, don't pay a fine, whether you win, lose, everybody gets paid, everybody wins except you.
So he couldn't care less. He's merely there as a referee, and that's why he wears a black robe.
That's right.
And that's another interesting subject we can get into later. But the judge is a referee between two teams. The judge, we are told, rules from the bench. The word bench in Latin is a bank. Therefore, the judge rules for the bank. Where do you...
Did you hear that? The word bench in Latin is bank. And the referee, the judge, wearing a black robe, sits at the bench. Interesting stuff.
find banks. You find banks on both sides of a river. They're called river banks. And what does a river bank do? It directs the flow of the current sea.
Man.
The juice. Consequently, your money is currency because it's the flow, the cash flow. And I'll give you an example of how this works. When a ship pulls into a harbor, all ships are referred to as female. Airships, rocket ships, sailing ships are always female. Why? There's a very good reason. Maritime Admiralty banking law says all ships are female because they're carrying items. They're carrying items for money, and so consequently they are under Maritime Admiralty law. Admiralty is where we get the word admiral, admiral of the Navy. Let me give you an example of how this works. When a ship pulls into harbor, it parks at the dock, and it ties off at the dock. The captain has to provide for the port authorities a certificate of manifest, because yesterday the ship was not here, but this morning the ship pulled in, so it has manifested. So consequently, all the products, the $800 million worth of TVs or Toyotas, have manifested. So each one of those items coming off of that ship has come off of water. And each end they has come in a ship. And consequently, on a ship, all ships have a captain. The word captain comes from a Latin word capital, money. So the captain represents the money that's on board the ship.
Right.
And as I said, the captain has to present to the port authorities a certificate of manifest for each and every item. How much does it weigh? What color is it? How many doors does it have? Etc. And consequently, the captain presents a certificate of manifest. The ship is sitting in its berth. Wherever a ship sits when it docks is called its berth. She sits in her berth, berthing a ship.
Wow.
Consequently, all the items, as I said, coming off that ship represent money. They came in on water. They are Maritime Admiralty product. And this is true all over the world. Now, when you were born, your mother's water broke. And when your mother's water broke, you came out. And this is why you have to have a birth certificate.
Whoo! Come on, somebody. Like Miss Sherry Brown was saying, I think I see her on here today. Good morning, sis. But did you hear what he said? Now, I want you to understand the relationship between this maritime admiralty law and you and your own birth certificate, because he's making a connection here. This is a very powerful connection, and I think some other people have touched on it, but to the best of my knowledge, he was the first to really bring it out into the open in such a way as he has today.
Because you are a maritime admiralty product under international law.
Ooh. You are a maritime admiralty product under international law. I'm not saying this. I'm repeating what somebody very much more knowledgeable about the subject is saying himself.
Your body is considered a maritime admiralty product. Your mother delivered you. This is why if you go to Sears and buy a refrigerator, they will ship it to you.
Wow.
They will deliver it. And that's why you were in your delivery room. Your mother was delivering a product. Maritime admiralty. You came down your mother's birth canal.
Wow.
And once you, and as you're taking one of the televisions or the cars off the ship and it falls down and breaks, that's all right. Sometimes they're stillborn, so consequently you've lost money on that one. Therefore you have to have a death certificate. And it's always signed by the doc. The doc has to sign your birth certificate and your death certificate. All of these words and terms are maritime admiralty banking words. And therefore, if you understand lawyers and judges and courts and government are all under international maritime admiralty law. All religions, all churches in the world operate under maritime law. This is why all churches are divided into denominations, like 20s and 50s and 100s. Serious. This is why they're called denominations, because all churches are nothing more than the product of maritime admiralty banking. It's an extraordinary story of occult treason, high treason and crimes against the state. Make no mistake about it, there has never been a country on the face of the earth as far back into history as you can go. There has never existed a country in which the people rose up and demanded their right to be free. Never. The concept
Wow, did you hear that?
of human, spiritual, intellectual, and physical freedom is a totally concept that has never, ever existed on the earth. The only time that has ever come into existence was the founding of this country, where it was understood that we were sovereigns and we owned our bodies, and consequently, since 1868, we're now on the International Maritime Admiralty Law. Think about this, when cowboys in Indian movies, when the cowboys would ride into town, they'd get off the horse, they were wearing guns. How come they could walk into a bar carrying guns? And if two guys got in an argument, they could go out on the street and draw on each other in front of the sheriff's office, and the sheriff would do nothing. How come? How come that men could go out in the street and shoot each other in front of everyone and had nothing be done about it? The reason why is because before 1868, all Americans were considered sovereigns. And that's one of the nice things about being a sovereign, is you
Up until 1868, all Americans were considered sovereign.
have the right to be yourself. And consequently, you need to understand that in one last point I'm going to make before I introduce your speaker, that in 1868 there was a corporation founded. Anyone can incorporate a company. Well, in 1868 there was a company incorporated. And in that particular company, the founders of that company called it, they referred to it as the United States Corporation. And they stipulated that anybody who would be a member of that corporation or work for that corporation would be called not an employee, but a citizen. So today, if you are asked, are you a citizen of the United States, what you think you're being asked is, are you lawfully in this country to do business? That's not lawfully what's being asked. They didn't ask you if you were in America lawfully. They asked you a specific question. Are you, of your own volition, out of your own mouth, testifying that you are a citizen of the United States? Because in that way, citizen of the United States means you are an employee of a foreign corporation operating on international maritime law. So today, the President of the United States is the president of a privately owned company. The company is called United States.
I just want y'all to think about that for one moment before I move on.
And the word president is always a word that is used in corporate law. Banks have presidents. All companies have presidents. So there's a corporation called United States, privately owned, and it has a president. President Bush is not the president of America. President Bush is the president of a privately owned company. Privately owned, out of England. And you need to understand words and terms. Because I believe that there is a divine presence in the universe that men call God, and one day that divine presence is going to move on the earth, and we're going to see freedom come back to this world. And when it does...
Who? What'd he say? And we're going to see freedom come back to this world. I hope everybody on here has the same interest in mind of bringing that freedom back. I just want to say real quick, that's what we're doing. That's why your mission is so important. You're not offering people a free gold savings account. No. You're bringing back freedom.
You're going to need to understand words and terms and how they have been used to trick you.
That's it. That's it. I'm done. The stream is over, guys. Well, we're getting off of here. Sorry. No, I'm just joking. But man, he dropped some bombs. Now, I see there's some questions in the queue, and I will provide that information, that link, as well as the individual's name. It's actually in the title of the show. His name is Jordan Maxwell, and he's been doing what he's been doing for a long time. Very, very passionate about his work. Some people may agree and disagree with him as a person, or even the information he brings out. But as you do your research, I think that you're going to find everything that was said in this video to be fact. I couldn't dispute not one thing. I bring people on here, and I don't agree with everything that all of them say. But today, in that particular lecture, I can't find one thing I disagree with that he has said. And man, it's just some powerful stuff, some really powerful stuff. Let me see what our time's looking like. Okay, we're looking pretty good on time. I'm gonna bring something up for you. This is an article from Forbes magazine. I like Forbes. I'm not saying they're more or less reputable than anybody else, but what I will say is that their main topic is money, and that's why I like Forbes, and I like to use them as a resource. And so let's bring this up. I'm gonna try to make this as big as possible so y'all can read with. Excuse me. Let's see if I can make it a little bigger here. No, it's probably still kind of small, huh? Okay, well, I'm gonna read off it for you, and you guys don't have to worry about it. I'll make it as big as I can. Yeah, that's as big as it's gonna get. So it says the United States should stop issuing dollars. Okay, and it says in this captivating documentary, and we'll get into this another day, by Steve Forbes, Elizabeth Ames and Company, in Money We Trust, which aired last year on PBS. The producers were kind enough to quote me quoting the great Austrian economist Karl Menger on the definition of money. Money is the commodity that can readily acquire any other commodity. Deep, right? Readily you say, what then could be with these legal tender laws dating to the Civil War and still on the books? It's not money if you have to force people to accept it. Let me say that again. It's not money if you have to force people to accept it. On this strict definition, the current US dollar is not money. Now, meanwhile, this is a Forbes article, people. I'm not pulling this out of a hat or from Daily UK News or the Sun Times or nothing. As the federal government contemplates nominees to the Federal Reserve Board, questions of the nature regain their pertinence. The Constitution gives Congress two clear monetary powers. Congress can coin money and regulate the value thereof. At this point, Congress is argumentatively doing the first, but not the second. Okay? So they're coining money, but they're not regulating the value thereof. It is not coining money per se in any volume, not by a long shot, but via the intermediary of the Federal Reserve, it is printing it, virtually speaking. By the institution's issuance of dollars via reserve system, the buying of bonds, if we can concede for a moment that virtually printing is possible within the definition of coining, then the government is availing itself of its first monetary authority. That means what's going on right now is unlawful. It's unlawful. What they're doing to us, man. And regulating the value thereof. There is no sign of this. Traditionally, regulate the value thereof meant defining the thing in reference to something else. For years, the United States recognized the market value of just under an ounce of silver and declared that the value by its lights was $1. Okay? So $1 used to be exchangeable for an ounce of silver. Okay, so it says, where was it? Okay. For years, the United States recognized the market value of just under an ounce of silver, declared that value by its lights was $1, adding that the United States also recognized a near ounce of silver, a dollar, as a 15th or a 16th of a near ounce of gold. Here was regulate the value thereof. This private monetary medium that people are using, silver, about an ounce of that is $1. And this other medium that people are using at a higher price, a 15th or a 16th of that is $1. Why are we not doing this today? It is the clear constitutional opportunity and precedent. You might say that the Constitution only offers the regulate power to Congress. Congress doesn't have to take it. But then you also have to say that coining money is coining money, and forget about printing and its virtual counterparts. The government is not really supposed to be making, as in manufacturing and offering, any money unless it is coining it. This is unlawful. They're not supposed to be doing this. This is unconstitutional. Why is it happening? Because we accept it. We'll get into that later. The government is not really supposed to be making, as in manufacturing and offering, any money unless it's coining it. That means they're supposed to be taking something that already has value and making it into a nominal value that is more readily exchangeable. And the Constitution encourages the government to offer a definition of money that could be availed of its marketplace at large. Congress is supposed to define money, and everyone else is supposed to make it privately under this definition, and there you have your money supply. If the feds want to throw in a few coins, maybe properly defined notes, Congress has the power to issue debt. And that's what you're dealing with those dollars, with those fiat dollars. I can't even show you one. I keep that crap away from me, right? With those fiat dollars, that's what's happening. And the feds want to throw in okay, Congress has the power to issue debt of their own into the mix. Great. There is your constitutional monetary system. The temptation to call out this kind of thing as atavistic, pre-modern, unserious, crank economics, not quite Ivy League, etc., perhaps would have some force if won. The Fed were not 117 years of age. So, how many people know that? The Fed is 117 years old, and therefore required to account for its need to perpetuate. The Fed were not the largest employer of the establishmentarian base of criticism of the gold standard, namely economics, PhDs. And 3, you have and say things in a false Leibnizian vein like Barack Obama's economy was the best of all possible worlds. Long-term economic growth of 1 to 2% and widespread loss of confidence in the American economy were completely alien in the era of constitutional money. Here is what recent prize-winning paper has to say about the matter. The government's involvement in the monetary system, if it's involved at all, need not extend beyond defining the unit of account as a specific amount of monetary commodity and potentially issuing liabilities that can be redeemed for monetary commodity, which it may do in competition with private banks. Historically, of course, the governments of countries on the gold standard did intervene substantially in monetary affairs. Prior to World War I, these interventions were normally limited to times of war, which meant that during peacetime the gold standard was largely decentralized, such that the purchasing power of each country's monetary unit was determined by the forces of supply and demand. We happen to be at peace. There are no constitutional grounds for refraining from using the power to regulate money in the proper sense, which, if accomplished, would spark a resurgence in the private monetary creation. Since the Fed was founded in 1913, official uncoined United States currency was essentially destroyed, private money denominated as dollars. Congress should correct this quite clearly unconstitutional imbalance, define the dollar as within its power, and for good measure ease out of the money creation business, which probably includes denuding the Fed, as an act of good faith that it is trying to reclaim its monetary mandate. I'm going to leave that there. And I do have something else to drop today, and it's off the topic, so it's kind of like a mix of lessons here. But let me bring that up for y'all real quick. So give me a second. Because I've been kind of dropping the bad news on y'all. It's time to show y'all something really positive. And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news all the time. And it seems, excuse me, let me just bring this on down here. We want to pop our window open. And this is a new something posted by Crypto Data, okay? And this has to do with our company, and I want to show everybody this. It's important. So what it says here is, what is EWTL? Electronic Warfare Transmitted Location. Okay? Electronic Warfare Transmitted Location. Interesting stuff.
EWT.
Hold on, we don't have our TV up yet. Sorry about that. Let's bring it back. Okay, here we go.
EWTL is an innovative technology that secures the privacy of your digital location. And here's how it works. Every internet-connected device has an IP address for identification. Each time you connect to a third-party server, your IP is vulnerable to hackers. EWTL uses a groundbreaking algorithm in order to protect the identity and location of VOBP users. Since all devices function as servers, we can use random devices selected by the blockchain to become central points. Other devices send out coordinates into the network that are in accordance with the selected devices, displaying their location.
Let me ask you a question real quick. When we're talking about things that are unfair and unconstitutional and invading our privacy, I mean, how do you feel about corporations knowing your location at all times? Not only knowing your location, being able to watch how you move. Now, they say it's for consumer purposes, but this is very, very invasive. This technology that we have here at Karatbars International with our partnership with Crypto Data, and of course the Crypto Data's founder Amadeo Toma, we have a system that can now protect you, your privacy. I often mentioned before, privacy and privilege. Well, see, the privilege of privacy was only afforded to the wealthy before now. That includes gold. That includes being able to go where you want, where everybody doesn't know where you're going. Well, Howard Seiss, through his infinite wisdom and vision, his dream, that was partially inspired by Dr. King's speech, is to give us this freedom back.
This process keeps the real location hidden. A combination of military technology and the VOBP encryption algorithm ensures the security of coordinates. Revealing your location and sharing it with another user requires peer-to-peer communication with end-to-end encryption. What's more, the blockchain system constantly checks to ensure security integrity. Each individual location, device, and position becomes a new unique hash. Users can only decrypt if they have a common key for the communication channel. It's important to know that devices used as servers cannot decrypt information. They are simply used as walls with no decryption keys. The multiple innovations behind EWTL ensure your privacy and always keep your information safe, so you're no longer vulnerable every time you go online.
Right. So, you know, the reason I showed this and the reason I think that this is important, it actually does tie into today's topic, even though it's a little bit off, is because we're talking about regaining our sovereignty, regaining our privacy, starting to be able to have some of the privileges that the Constitution promised us, that I believe the Founding Fathers may have wanted for us. Unfortunately, as we were warned about, the bankers took control of our government. And there's been a coup. And the people you think are ruling are not ruling. What did they tell you before in the last video? The president is not the president of this country. He is the president of a private corporation. Do you think that the president of the United States doesn't know that? Of course he does. Of course he does. We are the ones in the dark. But now it's time to start illuminating, and that's where you get the whole idea of Illuminati from, the enlightened ones. We're start illuminating this world so that we can see the truth. Because we're all meant to be kept in the dark, while those very few are meant to be able to see the truth. The only issue is, now that you know, what are you going to do? Well, one thing you can do is this. You can start to take advantage of a revolutionary system called Karatbars International that allows us to acquire gold in small increments, to have technology that gives us our privacy back. We're not just talking about not having our phones tapped when we talk, not having our messages intercepted and recorded and stored in a database, and all our video and all of our communications for that matter captured and stored. But additionally to that, we're talking about having privacy of where we go and what we do. Now, sure, if you want to give all that away, you can continue to stay with the phones that you have, with the Android, the iPhone. Watch all the lawsuits that come out about them, all these class actions that you don't get any of the money from, mind you, even though it's your privacy. We'll get into that another time. So where's all this money that they're being sued for going? I didn't get a check, even though they... So my point is that with great knowledge comes great power, and with great power comes responsibility. This knowledge is powerful, but it also puts you in a position of responsibility to take action, to stop allowing your rights, your constitutional rights, to be violated. Freedom is a choice. And if you let me tell it, it starts with registering for a free gold savings account, which all of you can do simply by getting back to whoever's page this is on, or whoever shared this with you. And if I shared it with you, obviously, you're going to want to contact me. But with that being said, guys, I just want to tell you, we are in the midst of major changes in the world. Freedom is coming back. Are you ready? Tyree Davis. Yeah, that young man is on fire. Tyree Davis said, knowing without doing is the same thing as not knowing. I'm going to pin that comment. I like that. I'm going to pin that comment to the top. Knowing without doing is the same thing as not knowing. So here's the issue. Now you know some information. You got some new information to work with. But what are you going to do with it? Are you going to squander it? Like you do with a lot of your income? I'm not talking to anybody on this stream. I'm talking to the people that y'all invite who need this information. But what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with this information? Certain people are like, man, Kansu's dropping some bombs today. This is fire. Okay, but what are you going to do with it? How do you plan to apply it? I hope so. Deb Nixon says, I'm ready. Good. Let's go. Let's go. We have the power to bring massive change. Maybe y'all don't know how important your mission is yet. You'll know in the future. When this goes down in the annals of history, and I'm not talking about his story, I'm talking about our story. Our story, as Pa Nabab teaches us. Not his story, our story. When this goes into the annals of our story, you're going to realize how important your mission is here. Your mission is so important because most of the people are still asleep. We're not hiding this technology. Jordan Maxwell wasn't hiding that information he broke down. He actually did that lecture when George Bush was president. That's how deep this is. But how many of us are willing to wake up? Wake up! Please, 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 wake up. This is not the time to be asleep. We had generations to sleep. There was even a spell of sleep called the spell of Kingu. Some of my Sabian brothers and sisters know about that. This is the time to be awake. And you know, Ricardo Hamilton says something great. Being woke and broke is a joke. So you can't be woke and be broke at the same time. It doesn't add up. So we need to start to pay ourselves first in a tier 1 appreciating asset, which is 24 karat gold, which you can get from, right over there, Carat Bars International. You see the bar gold on the floor, right? And it starts with a choice. Freedom is a choice. Being awake or sleeping is a choice. Waking up early in the morning is a choice. Going out there and saving people is a choice. Please realize, you're not doing this. I mean, you are doing this to create a legacy. You are doing this to create a passive residual income, which you won't have to trade your time for money. Yes. But there's something way more important that I believe we should all be focused on. It's freedom. And it's bringing the masses, awakening the masses that this freedom exists. Because when we say choice is only available to those who know that they have one. Most people don't know there's a choice. So my goal on here, guys, like, what is this guy doing? What is he talking about? What is he saying? Where is he going with this? I'm simply trying to plant the seeds to wake people up. And I have a proposed solution. Everybody talks about the problem. Even Jordan Maxwell, he identified the problem. What is the solution? Well, I'll tell you this. It starts with getting out of this racket, this debt. And you can do that simply by starting to acquire gold. And if you tell other people how to acquire gold, you can make even more money and more gold. And for many of us, more cryptocurrency. But that's in the past. Right now, it's about the gold. We're back at the gold. That's what this company was founded on, the gold. Putting the gold in the hands of the masses. But that wasn't enough for him, because he knew that that by itself wouldn't cause freedom, because they would still be in our business. We needed our own payment system. We needed our own technology to make this payment system possible, so we can cut out the middleman. So we can cut out the referee and the defense and prosecution teams. So we can cut out everybody else who's in our pocket. Ronald Newton said, out from under the thumb of this cartel economy. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's absolutely right. On that note, I know I went over the time today, guys. I'm fired up. I love y'all. Thank y'all for tuning in. Thank you for spending all this time with me. Time is definitely the most precious thing in the world. And I appreciate every moment you spend here today. You're my family. I love you all. And you know what I say? Well, for one, tune into the power call. It's coming up in in about a half an hour, because this is not the power call. And this is definitely not a substitute. This is only the unofficial pre-power call warm-up show. My name is Kansu Hotep Atum. Wadu and Au.